There's a story in the midrash of a person who sees a bee and says, "Get away from me, bee. I don't want you. Lo mi duvshech velo mi uktzech." Neither your honey nor your sting. And that phrase, neither your honey nor your sting, has become a common Hebrew expression for the idea that the benefits and joys of a project are not worth enduring the pain and effort that it would take to produce them. It's kind of like the English expression, the juice ain't worth the squeeze. Without bees, we wouldn't be stung, but we also wouldn't have flowers or trees or fruit or honey. And in that midrash, the person says, it's not worth the bother. In 1980, when the great Israeli poet and songwriter Naomi Shemer wanted to offer comfort to her sister Ruth, whose husband had just died, she dedicated the song Al Kol Eleh to her, and it became an instant Israeli classic. Al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al hamar ve'hamatok, for the honey and the stinger, for the bitter and the sweet, for our little baby girl, please, my good and gracious God, guard them. Al kol eleh, al kol eleh, for all these things, for all these things, for the honey and the stinger, for the bitter and the sweet. Shemer takes the midrash and turns it on its head. Whereas the midrash says, I want neither the honey nor the sting, Shemer says, if the price of avoiding the sting is to give up the honey, well, count me out. The honey is too sweet to let the pain of the sting deter me. And sure enough, that message, it resonated with generations of Israelis and Jews all over the world who know that the realities of life as a Jew can be difficult and painful. It can sting, it can be challenging and frustrating, but it can be so sweet. And if having one means enduring the other, we'll take that package deal. But I worry that in 5784, in 2023, the Al Kol Eleh paradigm is being tested. I worry that more and more Jews, whether they're in Israel or in America, especially young Jews, are saying it's not worth it. And that concerns me greatly. And I think it should concern all of us here today. Never was this reality so clear to me as it was this summer during my time in Israel. As many of you know, I was there for a little over a month. For 1 week of that time, I participated in the Metro West Centennial Mission to Israel led by CAI congregant Ira Steinberg. There were 500 people from across our Jewish community experiencing the sweetness that Israel has to offer and also witnessing how the good work of Federation works in partnership with Israelis to take the sting out of the difficulty of life in Israel. Thanks to the leadership of the outgoing president of Federation, David Saginaw, and so many others, our community is deeply connected to Israel. Did you know that of the 500 people on this mission, 45 of them were from our congregation, from CAI? It was such a joy for me to spend quality and quantity time with so many of our fellow congregants in Israel. We even celebrated a member of our community, Jason Kupferberg's adult bar mitzvah, at the Kotel on Friday night. There was lots of honey on this trip, lots of honey. And the rest of my time there, we just lived daily life in Israel. My family and I rented an apartment in the Baca neighborhood of South Jerusalem. It's known for its great cafes and restaurants, its rich religious life and intellectual culture. We enrolled our kids in a neighborhood sports camp. We went to a variety of neighborhood shuls. We visited friends and family around the country and experienced the hospitality of so many amazing people. We ate as much delicious kosher food as we could. There was so much sweetness this summer, I'm not sure I can fully convey it to you adequately. It was great for me. It was great for my family. In fact, at more than one point, I turned to Talia and I said, what if we just stayed? We'd be poor, but we'd be happy. We'd be fulfilling the hopes of our ancestors who could only dream of this place. How could we not participate in building its future? I was only a quarter serious. No more, but also no less. That's how sweet it was. To see our kids speaking Hebrew, buying new kippot, having a rich Shabbat life in our neighborhood, introducing them to cousins, the religious ones and the secular ones, the ones who immigrated from England and taught our kids to take the lift from their flat and put the bag in the boot of the car. And they met the native-born Sabras, the Israelis, who had never been to America, but also loved Super Mario Brothers and who knew all the lyrics to Hamilton. We rode buses with them. We went to the new massive playground at Gan Sacher. It was so sweet, the sweetest of sweet. Pure dvash, honey. But Israel also comes with a sting. For much of its first 75 years, that pain has come from being surrounded by enemies bent on its destruction. Wars, terrorism, delegitimization in the international community. Israel has had to contend with these forces in a way that few other nations have. But like a beautiful diamond, or perhaps like a sabra, the cactus fruit, the pressure and harshness of the environment actually made the inside of Israel stronger, sweeter, more beautiful. Israelis are so resilient. They're the kind of people you want by your side in a crisis. Today we mark the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. That was as painful a time as any in Israel's history. Israel was on the brink of ceasing to exist because of a surprise attack by surrounding nations on this day, on Yom Kippur, and the timing was no coincidence. Today we remember that awful moment in Israel's history and the incredible sacrifice that people made to ensure its survival. But if the pain of Israel used to come from external threats in the past, this summer we were witness to a very different type of Israeli pain. For now Israel is at war with itself. And this battle poses as existential a threat to Israel's survival as the Yom Kippur War did 50 years ago. Because when Israel is united in purpose and moral vision, it is strong. But when it is divided, it is vulnerable. Never before in my many visits to Israel did I hear people actively concerned about the possibility of civil war. Never before had I heard people talk about the possibility of Churban Bayit Shlishi, the destruction of the third house, the third temple. The first two temples, as you know, built in Jerusalem, were known as Bayit Rishon and Bayit Sheni. And many see the modern state of Israel as the third republic of the Jewish people, imbuing it with historic and religious significance. That house, they fear, like its two predecessors, if divided against itself, will not stand. The rabbis tell lots of stories about why the first two temples were destroyed. But they fall into one of two main categories. One is that it was destroyed because of sinat chinam, baseless hatred, every Jew for his brother, having unfound hatred for other people who were not like them, sectarianism, divisions within the Israeli nation. The other general category of explanations has to do with religious extremism, with political corruption and abuse. And I used to think these were two different families of explanations, but now I see they are one and the same. When there is a corrupt or abusive government, when there's extremism, well, that causes baseless hatred. And when people hate each other, it causes people to be more extreme in their views. This summer, I lived with a kind of constant cognitive dissonance. I was having such a wonderful time. And yet the country I cared about so much was in deep, deep pain. In fact, as I was leaving the country, a friend reached out by text and asked me, "How was your stay?" And I responded, on the micro level, amazing. We had the best time. And also frustrating to see how difficult things are on the macro level. And he responded, "Glad to hear it. That's the paradox of this place, isn't it?" There's a passage in the Torah. It can be found in the book of Numbers, chapter 32. The people of Israel were on the precipice of entering the land of Israel. They were preparing for the battle to conquer the land, going from slavery to reaching the promised land finally. Only two of the tribes, Reuben and Gad, say, "We like it here. We'd like to stay on the east side of the Jordan River in what is modern-day Jordan." They say, "You go ahead without us. We have lots of livestock, cattle, sheep. This land is good for grazing." And Moses is incensed. He's angry. "Ha'achechem yavou lamilchama va'atem teshvu fo." Are your brothers to go to war while you stay here? You know, there are times when you read the Torah and you feel like a character is speaking directly to you. You're going to stay here in the comfort of this land while your brothers are going to fulfill our people's destiny? In the Torah, they come up with a compromise. Reuben and Gad may settle outside the land of Israel, but only after they send shock troops, the Hebrew word is chalutzim, to help the other 10 tribes. They have to participate in the conquest of the land. In other words, you can choose to make your home outside the land of Israel. You can choose the economic comfort of the diaspora, but you have to have some skin in the game when it comes to fighting Israel's battles, and you have to have a stake in the future of your people. And for a long time, I think this paradigm has defined how we see the relationship between Israel and diaspora Jews. Jews could choose to live wherever they want, but we all have to support the project of Israel. So people volunteered. They raised funds through federations and other organizations. We rallied political support in our countries behind Israel. Some of our children went and made aliyah. They volunteered for the army. Wherever we walked for and with Israel, and wherever we stood with Israel. Though we choose to live here, we've always had skin in the game. But now we're facing a different kind of challenge, and we're not quite sure how to respond. With Israel so divided, as Israeli journalist Mati Friedman put it, it's not a question of whether or not you support Israel, it's a question of which Israel do you support. Now the issues are complex, too complex for me to unpack here today, so I've created a resource page with lots of podcasts and videos and articles. You can take time to learn more about these issues. A good place to start, I recommend, is Rabbi Silverstein's presentation, Israel at a Crossroads, which he delivered here in this congregation just a few months ago. Rabbi Silverstein has an incredible ability to take extremely complex topics and make them plainly understandable. I've included other resources as well, and we are going to continue to offer programs throughout the year that are going to give us a chance to continue the conversation and engage with the issues of the day. I hope you'll join. But this is Yom Kippur, and I am your rabbi. I stand here today not as a historian, not as a political analyst or a pundit. God knows the world already has enough bad political commentators. You surely don't need one more, and you don't need me to be that person. My job is to be an educator, to make you aware of these issues, but mostly my job is to care for your neshama, to care for your soul, and to care about the soul of the Jewish people. And that's what I'm speaking about here today. Israel stands at a crossroads, and the choices it makes, they will affect the soul of Israel. It's not one party or another. It's not one policy or another. We can disagree about that. We have and we will. No, it's deeper than that. It goes to the heart of what Israel will be. For the first 75 years of its existence, Israel has been a liberal democracy. And by liberal, I don't mean left-wing or progressive. What I mean is it's been committed to a certain kind of democratic process where power is balanced, where the rights of minorities are protected, where major changes to the character of the state happen slowly and only with broad consensus. That has been the reason it has been so natural for so many Jews here in America to support Israel. It's natural for the American government to support Israel. As the only democracy in the Middle East, Israel has been a strategic ally of the U.S. and a point of pride for us American Jews. In a tough neighborhood, it's maintained a moral posture that has distinguished it and earned it respect in our eyes and in the eyes of the world. And now some of that is in question. Some of the most extreme voices in Israel, people whose ideas were considered too extreme, that up until a year or two ago, it would have been unthinkable that they would hold a position of power, well, they have come into some of the most influential positions in the current coalition government. These extremists, and they are extremists, they now occupy some of the most powerful ministry positions, and they are seeking to push through the Knesset a series of radical changes that would fundamentally alter the balance of power in Israeli government. As you may know, Israel has no constitution. It has fewer checks and balances than American democracy. The only check on the power of the government is the judiciary, and the proposed overhauls would severely limit the power of the judiciary. Many Israelis agree that some reform of the judiciary is necessary, but these changes, the people pushing for them, and the pace and manner in which they are being pushed are widely unpopular. That's why so many Israelis across the political spectrum are protesting week after week. Millions of Israelis have participated in demonstrations. It is an astounding demonstration of love and support for the Israel that you know and love. By some counts, over 2 million individuals have gone to at least one demonstration. And many go on a weekly basis. They give up their Saturday night plans, they take their flag, and they go to a demonstration. We saw t-shirts, some people said, "No babysitter this week, Grandma and Grandpa are going to protest." My family and I attended a few of these weekly Saturday night protests in Jerusalem while we were there. It was amazing. It was a sea of blue and white, people of all ages and political backgrounds, coming together to voice their opposition to the way this government has abused its power. Every Saturday night, you hear the chants of "Demokratia," democracy. And when people talk about some of the things that are being done in government, you hear the crowd say, "Busha, busha." This is an embarrassment, an embarrassment. It's not about policy. The people protesting amongst themselves have very different opinions about any number of policies, about religious life, about settlements in Judea and Samaria, about the economy, about military service, and more. Instead, it's about the fundamental nature of the state. Will Israel continue to be a democracy? Will minority rights of Israeli Arabs or political minorities be respected? Will there be space for non-Orthodox Judaism in Israeli religious life, or will conservative Masorti Jews like us be delegitimized and even persecuted? Yes, these are questions that go to the heart and soul of a nation. Now, some of you sitting here might be thinking, this is all very interesting or concerning, or maybe you're thinking it's not that interesting. I care about this, but I'm not Israeli. I don't pay Israeli taxes. I didn't serve in the army. It's not really my business to get involved. I understand that perspective, and I think American Jews should be humble when engaging in conversations about Israel and its future. Ultimately, the solutions to these issues will have to be resolved by Israelis themselves. But that doesn't mean that these issues are irrelevant to us. If you care about the Jewish people, if you consider yourself a part of that people, then what any Jew does anywhere in the world affects every Jew everywhere in the world, and especially when the Jewish state takes certain actions in the name of Judaism. That should be of great concern to all of us. And you have a voice. You have a stake. Israel is the greatest Jewish enterprise and innovation in the past 2,000 years. How this crisis resolves will determine not only the future of Israel, but of Judaism and Jewish life the world over. There are 15 million Jews in the world. Approximately 7 million of them live in Israel, another 7 million in the United States, and about 1 million Jews live everywhere else in the world. As Rabbi Angela Buchdahl recently taught, the growing distance between these two heads, these two centers of Jewish life, might best be understood through a teaching in the Talmud. A rabbi was walking down the street and noticed a man with 2 heads and 1 body, what we might call conjoined twins. Upon seeing this person, the rabbi wondered, does that man have to wrap 2 sets of tefillin, or is 1 sufficient? Because that's what rabbis wonder about. And the answer to his question comes from a midrash involving King Solomon, who also encountered conjoined twins when they came to argue for a double portion of inheritance. Solomon had to decide, are they one person who happens to have 2 heads, or are they 2 people who share 1 body? So King Solomon suggests a test. Pour hot water on one of the heads, and if the other head screams out, then you will know that they are indeed one soul. Yes, it sounds harsh. But remember, this is the same King Solomon who proposed cutting a baby in half to determine its true mother. In both cases, I suspect he had no intention of following through, but he was trying to make a point. As Rabbi Buchdahl concludes, there's something profound in this teaching. If we want to know whether the Jewish people are still one body, one people, then we must see how one head responds to the suffering of the other. For years, I think American Jews have not fully appreciated the pain of our Israeli brothers and sisters. While they had to endure intifadas and rocket attacks from Gaza and Lebanon, many American Jews kept insisting that Israel withdraw from more and more territory. While Mizrahi, Middle Eastern Jews cried about the injustices of Israeli society, the lack of representation in positions of power and leadership, Ashkenazi Jews didn't respond to their cries. When settlers felt abandoned by their government and their nation after the withdrawal from Gaza in 2005, did we American Jews feel their pain? Did we appreciate their sacrifice? Those painful wounds, they left an open sore that just grew over time. And it's led to a politics of grievance. And I think the extreme government that we now see is a reaction to those realities. To love another is to feel their pain. And if we love the Jewish people, then we must be sensitive to their pain. There's an African proverb that if a child is unloved by his village, he'll burn it down just to feel its warmth. One evening this summer, I was visiting with my cousins in a suburb of Tel Aviv. They organized a big family gathering, 3 generations, multiple branches of the family were represented, and they ordered pizza, and our kids were playing soccer in the yard. And while the kids got to playing, the adults got to talking. And one by one, they expressed their concerns about what is happening to their beloved Israel. One of my cousins, who's a little older than I am, she was a career officer in the IDF. She's now retired from the military and is raising her 4 children. She was lamenting that a new proposed law would take away veterans' pensions if they were caught at a protest. She said the courts would probably strike it down. But if the court's power was taken away from them by the judicial overhaul, well, then they wouldn't be in a position to do so. At one moment, she became emotional, and she said to me, I love this country. It's why I served in the military so long. I'm worried that my children are growing up at a time and in an environment that makes it hard to love Israel. You see, she said, it's not easy to live here. You have to put up with a lot. And I'm worried that if they don't love Israel the way I do, they'll choose to leave. And I could tell that that possibility was breaking her heart. And as I listened to her speak, the song kept playing in my head, in my mind. Al kol eleh, al kol eleh. Here was my cousin confronting the pain and crisis of contemporary Israel, but still embracing its sweetness and determined that her children should not be overwhelmed by bitterness. Her family participated in the days-long march from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, almost like a biblical pilgrimage, thousands of Israelis, flags in hand, trying to send a message to stop this process before it's too late. And I shared her concern for our children, wanting them to love Israel the way we do. My cousins and I, we grew up in parallel lives. They in Israel, I in America. They're secular, I'm religious. They went to the army, I went to university. But we are family, and we've always found ways to talk about our hopes, our concerns, our shared history, our dreams. No matter our differences, our Jewishness united us. And we were always ready to embrace the honey and the stings, whatever they might be at any particular hour. But today, it is different. For the first time in all of our encounters, I sensed a note of doubt in her voice. Would she be able to overcome the sting for the sake of the honey? She wasn't sure. And so I turn to you in this hour of struggle for our brothers and sisters in Israel. Now more than ever, we must stand with them. Ha'od Am Yisrael Chai. Does the people of Israel still live? Do we still share one body, one soul? I feel like I often talk to one of three kinds of Jews these days. There's the honey Jew, the one who can only see the sweetness of Israel, who treats Israel as a kind of Disneyland, a tourist destination which is beautiful and happy all the time. Never mind the moral questions raised by Israel's relationship to the Palestinians. Never mind the violent strains of religious extremism. Israel can do no wrong. It's all honey. And the second kind of Jew is the stinger Jew, the one in whose eyes Israel can do no right. They see not the miraculous revival of a people, a language, a culture. They care not for the incredible technological and economic contributions of Israeli society. They feel not the pain of their brothers and sisters. They only know the sting that they perceive Israel has inflicted on itself and on others. And the third kind of Jew is the most troubling of all. The Jew who is apathetic, who, like the person in the midrash, says, I want nothing to do with any of it. Go away, bee. I want neither your honey nor your stinger. I'd like you to be an al kol eleh Jew, a Jew who feels the pain of your brothers and sisters, the right-wing ones and the left-wing ones, the Mizrahi and the Sephardi, the religious and the secular, the Haredi and the settler, the old and the young. Al kol eleh, shmor nali eli hatov. Dear God, protect all of them. If you're the kind of person who knows only about the honey, I need you to learn about the sting. And if you're the kind of person who sees only the sting, I need you to remember the honey. And in this year that is beginning, I'm asking you to stand with our brothers and sisters in Israel. Lift your voice. Let them know you feel their pain. Let them know they are not alone. Express your hope for what Israel could yet be. I'll conclude with a teaching by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs about the difference between hope and optimism. Optimism is the passive belief that things will be okay. Israelis even have a saying for it. Jordy said it last night. Yeh beseder. It'll all work out. Don't worry. But hope is something very different from optimism. It's not passive at all. It requires effort. Hope is the idea that if we work hard enough, together we can make things better. Given what we have endured in our long history, Jews tend not to be optimists. But we have never given up hope. And when they chose a national anthem for the Jewish state, it had one word in its title, Hatikva, the hope. Od lo avda tikvatenu, we have not yet lost our hope in what we can do together. I've given each of you a gift today. It's an Israeli flag. Perhaps you'll take it with you to a protest, or maybe you'll bring it with you when you walk for Israel with us on October 22nd. This gift comes with a responsibility to be part of the conversation in all of its sweetness and in all of its pain. I'd like you to take out those flags now and lift them high and join me as we raise the flags and sing Hatikva together. Please rise. Kol od balevav penima nefesh Yehudi Omiyah ulfate mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia Od lo avda tikvatenu התקווה בת שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים